So we're going to be going over everything you need to know about the MP5K, recoil, attachments, bullet sprays, what attachments are best, which are worst, what should you be using, and all the kind of difference and nuances between the attachments. And then I'm going to show you which ones I think are best based on my playstyle, my sensitivity, and my in-game settings. Okay. All right, here you go. So this is the SMG attachment cheat sheet that I made. Again, this is going to apply for all SMGs. I made one for assault rifles, which is simply different by having assault rifle flash hider, compensator, suppressor, and muzzle brake. And there are some differences with the SMG ones, which is why I had to remake the sheet for the SMG. So here is the quick differences from all of the SMG attachments. So a flash hider gives you +10 horizontal and vertical recoil control. Compensator gives you +20 horizontal and +25 vertical recoil. Suppressor doesn't give you any recoil control, but it does give you +5 hip fire control. It's going to be really important later. We'll talk more on that. Going to the grips, these are all the same though. So angle grip is the best horizontal control, 25%, but you do get -10% sway control and +10% ADS speed, your aim down sight. The half grip is kind of the middle road, jack of all trades, master of none grip. You get +8 in the horizontal and vertical. You lose a little bit in the sway control, and you get +10 recoil recovery. Vertical grip +15 vertical. That's it. Thumb grip +10% vertical recoil. So almost as good as the vert grip, but you get many other attributes, which is why I always say I think the thumb grip is really the new vert grip meta. I don't ever really see a reason to use a vert grip, but some weapons are different, and that's why we do these tests to see if it performs differently with any certain weapons and attachment combos. +20% sway control. So this is the first one you get a positive in the sway control. +40% aim down sight speed. This is huge. Big, big, big. And +10% recoil recovery. Then the lightweight grip is kind of this cheeky little grip. It's really designed for single fire usage, but I found in a number of my tests that it does offer one of the smoothest recoil patterns for most of your weapons. Now, it's not the easiest to control or necessarily the best, but the smoothest. And so depending on your playstyle, your sensitivities, and so on, that could actually be great for you. So lightweight grip has +20% sway control, +10% muzzle rise control, +20% recoil recovery, and it's the only grip to have +30% initial shot control. So this grip is great for single tap fire and burst fire weapons. Now, moving on to the 3 new attachments that we have not reviewed in the past, because this is the first gun to accept them, is the laser sight. This is going to give you +30% in hip fire control. Then you have the heavy tactical stock, which I'll just call the heavy stock. You get +10% in both the horizontal and vertical. You get -10% in the hip fire. You get -10% in the aim down sight speed, and a +5% in recoil recovery. Good old fashioned light stock gets 10% plus sway control, 10% plus ADS speed, muzzle rise control, and 5% recoil recovery. So the TLDR here is the heavy stock is usually the go-to attachment for automatic fire weapons, and the light stock is usually the go-to attachment for single tap fire or burst fire weapons. However, there are some nuances, and I will show you those in today's video. Let's take a look. First up, we have the MP5K 30 bullet spray for all of the muzzles. So we've got obviously no attachment. If you see this, that means no attachments at all. Then you've got suppressor, flash hider, and the compensator. Before I actually talk about the recoil pattern, I do just want to point out a couple of things. The MP5K, compared to the recently reviewed barrel and AUG, you're going to see has a crazy amount of bounciness in its recoil. This is 30 bullets for both weapons. Both of these sprays are 30 bullets. Just look at the lines. How jagged the MP5K looks compared to the AUG. So I just wanted to kind of get that baseline out there so you're aware of that. The MP5K, because it shoots so fast as a 900 rounds per minute rate of fire, is going to be incredibly bouncy in terms of its recoil pattern. Almost none of the attachments make it a really smooth to shoot experience, but it has almost 50% less recoil than the AUG. And the AUG is, for all intents and purposes, the best gun in PUBG right now. And so you can get a very powerful gun that shoots very fast with a high rate of fire, high DPS, damage per second, with half of the recoil required. So really, really strong. With that out the way, looking at just the muzzles, the compensator is the clear winner here. You can just tell that strictly by the vertical recoil. So the compensator gives you horizontal and vertical recoil control more than the flash hider. Suppressor doesn't give you any. It's pretty easy to see which one you would prefer to shoot with. However, what you don't see here is the flash hider is going to give you a benefit of the reduction of muzzle flash. But I'll be honest, with close quarter combat weapons, I really don't see a big benefit to using the flash hider on SMGs. It's more or less a compensator placeholder. The only way I could see a flash hider being important for close range combat is if maybe you're a solo player, you're playing on Vikendi, like night mode Vikendi, or you're playing on Sandhawk or Paramo, somewhere where you got a lot of bush and shrubbery. Reducing the flash may be beneficial, but otherwise I think it's compensator or suppressor, and I'll show you why I think the suppressor is useful in some of these other examples here. All right, now we got the stocks up. So the stocks, again, it's pretty easy to discern which one has the better recoil pattern. It is going to be the heavy stock because it gives you the horizontal and vertical recoil, and they have those other buffs that we just covered in the previous slide. However, the light tactical stock does have a bit less jagged movements than the heavy stock, and that is noticeable when you actually do some spray tests with the weapon. You can see it actually jumps around or bounces around less than the heavy stock. So there is a bit of a trade-off there. And again, I think that's going to come down to personal preference. And again, just like the muzzles, what you don't see here is the heavy stock is going to give you a reduction in your ADS speed, or I'm sorry, it's an increase in your ADS speed. So it's going to take longer to aim down sight. It's a 20% difference. And the hip fire is going to be reduced as well. So it's going to be harder to hip fire with this stock, and it's going to be slower to aim down sight with this stock. So there are some key trade-offs. So it's not just a one attachment fits all. It's going to depend on a few scenarios. All right, so our first example of the 10 bullet spray. So this is the first 10 bullets of those two attachments that I just showed you, the light stock and the heavy stock. And this is just one spray example. I tried to pick the best one out of each. So obviously the more examples you have, the better consistency you can show, and you can also show some of the outliers, but this will just give us a good general idea. So 10 bullet spray, no attachment, light stock, and heavy stock only. So this is with no other attachments listed. And if you're sticking to just bullet patterns, you can tell there's not honestly that much difference between the three. The light stock actually is a little bit higher in terms of total recoil than no attachment. The heavy stock's a little bit lower, but specifically you look at bullet placement, the 1-to-1 bullet placement is almost identical. The heavy stock is going to get the upper hand just barely. And why this is important here is to look at how far away the bullets are from each other, is because that means you're more likely to land multiple shots in the same place that you're aiming. Obviously, usually you're aiming for the head. So the closer together that these bullet points are means that you're more likely you are to hit a double headshot or a double chest shot or wherever you happen to be aiming. All right, next up is hip fire spray. I mean, this is like actually comical. So I kind of spoiled this, I think, a couple weeks ago when I was talking about doing some of my testing. Look at the recoil pattern for doing hip fire. It's like, it literally is comical. It looks like I just scribbled some lines here and just said, good luck, have fun. No attachments. The suppressor gives you plus 5% and the laser sight gives you plus 30%. And in this example, it's almost impossible to tell a real difference. So I had to do a bit more digging to show you guys the true difference. But there is a difference. So just know that there is a difference, but when doing the recoil pattern testing, it looks like it's all gibberish, okay? So you can kind of tell the more you stare at it. The laser sight is going to be a bit tighter together with its spread. The suppressor a little bit less so. And then of course, no attachment, it jumps around even more, okay? But when you break down to the first 10 bullets for the hip fire, you can kind of start to see a bit more of a difference. And it's mainly going to be on the groupings of your bullets together. So basically, what is the chances of you hitting, like we just said in the other slide, multiple shots at the same location that you're aiming at in quick succession? And so you can see here that the no attachment, you do get a couple together up close, but then it starts to drift off. Then you get a couple more close, then it drifts off, and a couple more close. The laser sight, you have 1, 2, 3 all kind of right together. The suppressor, even though it has less hip fire accuracy, it has 1, 2, 3, 4 all close together, but then you jump out pretty wide on the next two. So overall, obviously laser sight's going to be the best, and the general idea would be to combine both of these if you're going to be doing hip fire. And also keep in mind, this is at 15 meters of range. So this is relatively close range testing. So the further you are out, this will amplify significantly. So I know you've probably seen me do it. You've seen your favorite streamers do it. You probably have done it yourself. Those long hip fire kills where you almost don't believe that you killed that person using hip fire with the SMG, that's because the longer you are from your target, the more these differences will amplify. So having a laser and a suppressor really will help those 30 meter, 50 meter hip fire sprays. Not that you should be doing hip fire at that long distance, but sometimes you kind of just have to. You're getting in and out of the shots real quick, and that's where you get those extra benefits. All right, moving on to the grips recoil spray. So just by looking at the recoil of each grip, I honestly didn't think there was any clear like dead winner, just simply because of the inherent bumpiness that I tried to describe earlier with the MP5. There are some standouts. Some of the standouts are actually the thumb grip, once again, because the thumb grip does give you great vertical recoil control. So you can see it's almost as good as a vert grip, which has the most vertical recoil, but the thumb grip has really good tight groupings early on in its spray, and it has that 40% ADS speed, which is super useful. Then the lightweight grip is kind of standout to me as well because of those first few bullet groupings. But I will admit, on the MP5K, for some reason, and this is why we do these tests, the first few bullet groupings weren't as tight as I was expecting for the lightweight grip. On the AUG and the barrel, they were much tighter together, but on the MP5K, because it just has so much left and right bounce, this wasn't as good as I was expecting. Like I said earlier, the half grip, kind of the jack of all trades, master of none, really good vertical recoil. So it's a little bit worse than the thumb grip, but the horizontal control is actually really good. They're very tight groupings together. And what I really like to look out for is I like to zoom in and kind of trace the bullet line as it goes up. The less of the recoil pattern bounces left to right means the less input you will have to give it in controlling that recoil. So the more on target you'll stay. So if you have something like this that's going left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right, those are small minor inputs that you have to make throughout that spray of the weapon to stay on target. But when you have more sprays that have long gaps in between, this doesn't mean that there's one bullet here and one bullet here. This means there's a bullet, 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 bullet. So they're all nice and tight in a line and very easy to control. So that's why something like an angle grip is really good, because it helps keep your sprays much more linear. All right, now moving on to the combination. Now this one's going to get a little busy, so bear with me here. But for this one, you're going to have a compensator on every one, and then we cycle through all of the grips, so the angled, the half, the vert, the thumb, and the lightweight, and then we broke it down from there, the light stock and the heavy stock. And you can see the recoil differences here for each are pretty consistent. The light stock on the left is going to be a little bit worse and a little bit higher than the heavy stock on the right. And you can just see that as you scroll across. So you pick whatever your favorite grip is, zoom in, you can see the one on the left is a little bit higher than one on the right, unless a little bit higher than one on the right, a little bit higher than one on the right. This was a little bit of a standout with the lightweight grip. Again, I was expecting this one to have a much more linear effect on the spray, and which it kind of did on the light stock here. There's not much left to right movement. And then when I went to the heavy stock, it started to jump around a lot more, but it was more consistent. Each spray overlapped each other much more consistently, making it a much more predictable attachment for that combo. Going on to the 10 bullet spray. In my opinion, when looking at this graph here, the angle grip combo is one of the standout ones. And the reason why is because the last bullet ends at almost identically where the first bullet starts. And that's what I was talking about with the horizontal control, making it a linear spray, a predictable spray pattern. So the number 10 bullet is going to end vertically, almost directly aligned with the first bullet. And it's the same thing for both stocks, lightweight or heavy. And you see the heavy's a little better with the recoil. The bullets are a little bit better grouped. The other attachments aren't going to be as so. Like the half grip starts here and ends way over here. Starts here, ends over here. Same thing with the vert. starts here, ends over here. You get the picture. This particular spray was actually really nice in terms of vertical lineup, and thumb grip was really good too. So good vertical control, but this one did seem to have a bit more of a sway to it. Same amount of really horizontal movement, but more of an angled sway. And the lightweight grip, again, I was expecting the lightweight grip to be more powerful than what it is on the MP5K. So like with the AUG and the barrel, you could go, the first couple bullets are really tight together, but look at this. The lightweight grip first bullet, it is a little lower than almost every other one, but not by much. I mean, it's barely lower than any of the other bullets. And you would typically see the first 2 or 3 bullets be really tight together on the lightweight grip. So I do find it hard to recommend the lightweight grip with the MP5 just because of what we see with the recoil analysis. All right, moving on. Like we did on the barrel, based on some of your feedback from the last video, I took it to the firing range. And in the firing range, the idea here is to do 90 bullet sprays. So 3 spray tests, 3 magazines at 15 meters distance. And this is a cold shot. So I did not practice. I did not warm up. This is just picking up the gun, picking up the attachments, and doing my best job at trying to control the recoil. And the intent here is to simulate what would it really feel like if you were playing the game, you landed on a hot drop, and these are the attachments you picked up. What would your results be, okay? So if you never use the firing range, you can shoot at this target and it tracks all of your bullet hits, the percentage of those bullet hits, and the area where you hit. And the idea is to hit within the number 1 circle. That's going to be considered the enemy's head. And then anything outside of that would be, you know, like a chest shot or a shoulder shot, or maybe you miss completely, okay? So the idea is to have the most bullets hit into the number 1. And so first I did a baseline with no attachments, and I got 53% on that one. On the next one, I did the angle, grip. All of these are going to have the compensator. So same thing with the other tests, right? Every one is going to have a compensator. Then I'll cycle between an angle grip, and then the left side is going to be a light stock. The right side is going to be a heavy stock. So that's the comparison that we're going to do on each one. And then I'm going to highlight the winner. So with the angle grip, the winner was the heavy stock, and you can see is pretty significant too. So with the heavy stock and the angle grip, look at how tight the grouping was here. And I was able to get a 76% accuracy rating with 69 bullets into a headshot compared to the lightweight, or light stock rather, sorry. Kind of confused with the lightweight grip and light stock. So the regular tack stock with only 64% headshot. So if you're going to use angle grip, this is the combo winner, at least for me. And we move on. Next one, half grip, same thing. The heavy stock won here by a considerable margin. 76% were headshots, whereas only 62% were headshots with the regular tactical stock. And you see obviously much more of those shots went to the second ring, the outer ring there. And I had one stray bullet here go down the third ring on the light stock. So heavy stock was the winner, although there were a little bit more jump. And this one, this is what I showed you guys in the actual bullet spray pattern, the 10 shot, is that it did, with the half grip and the heavy stock, it did jump around a bit more. So you see really good grouping, but every now and then the spray would kind of just jump in different directions, whereas this one was much more consistent. All right, so vert here. The winner in this time actually shifts to the regular tactical stock. So the tack stock wins here. Yet, even though it's not as strong as the angled and the half grip from before, it's only got a 62% headshot. But I honestly think that with a larger scope or a further distance away, like 30 meters, 50 meters, etc., I think this combo right here would actually probably start to shine a bit more. And a key point is that I also run my vertical sensitivity multiplier at a 1.7, which means I have to pull down vertically less than you would have normally if you didn't adjust that number in your settings. So I could have been overcompensating in some of my shots. You see some of them kind of go down a little low here on the side. Same thing over here. That very well could be user error. Again, this is a cold shot, not practiced, not warmed up. I wasn't trying to get the best, the best example. I was just trying to get a realistic example of what these attachments feel like for me. And the goal is obviously for you to see this and pick out your favorite combo and then go test it yourself and see how it is for you and your sensitivities. All right, so the thumb grip does win with the light stock here. And this actually wins with the best headshot percentage yet. 78% of my shots were headshots with the compensator, thumb grip, and the regular tactical stock. I was really impressed by this and kind of surprised. I was completely anticipating the heavy stock to be the dominant winner in any of the full-on sprays. But you can see here 65% to 78%. So no, it wasn't. All right, going on to the lightweight grip. Now with the lightweight grip, it did flip-flop, but not by much. So the lightweight grip landed 67% headshots with the heavy stock and only 62% headshots with the regular tactical stock. But I did notice how here I wasn't pulling down enough in some of the sprays with the regular tac stock. And I think I wasn't compensating enough over here because of the vertical sense multiplier that I have and the lack of vertical recoil control that you get from the lightweight grip. So I'm confident you actually could get this down a bit tighter too. But again, it's one of those things. It's your personal preference with your settings. You may be anticipating a different, sensitivity or DPI or in-game sensitivity than I am. All right, so that's all the attachments and the winners of those. Hipfire. So this one was the weirdest one for me. So check this out. So for hipfire, I did the same thing at the same distance, and I just held my aim key, the AIM key, which tightens up your hipfire accuracy. And I did the same spray, trying to control the recoil at 30 meters away. And for hipfire, what was interesting is that I assumed that the regular tactical stock would be superior, given that it doesn't reduce hipfire recoil control like the heavy stock does. So the heavy stock, you lose accuracy with hipfire. Yet here in this test, I was 41% accurate at headshots versus with the regular tactical stock, I was only 31%. And this is with it being fully kitted. This is a suppressor, a laser. So this is 5% recoil, 30% hipfire recoil, and then this is minus 10% here, and this doesn't give you any minus for hipfire. So I was fully expecting this one to win, but it didn't, and it was significant too, 41 to 31. So this next one, I had an idea. I said, okay, well, what if I don't listen to the stats that PUBG posts about hipfire accuracy? They have the suppressor gives you plus hipfire, laser sight gives you plus hipfire. Supposedly it tightens up your hipfire accuracy. But I had a thought. I said, what if I just grabbed what I believe to be one of the best attachment combinations for the weapon and try to hipfire it? What's the difference? And look at this. So compensator, vert grip, regular tactical stock. I managed a 43% headshot hipfire accuracy and 51% at the level two area. Comp, vert, and a heavy tac stock was 41% at headshots and 48% in the level 2 area, So if I go back to what I thought was going to be the obvious superior choice, was obviously here, suppressor, laser, and the heavy tactical stock was 41%. Okay, so now take away all of the supposedly hipfire buffed attachments, and I somehow got a higher headshot percentage with a compensator, vert grip, and regular tac stock. Now it's close, right? 43 to 41 is not like it blew it away. That could be in the room of error, of just trying it a couple times and okay, you got the feel for it. But 51% in the second area, 5% in number 3, 41% in the second area, 15% in 3, and 2% even way out to 4. So oddly enough, it seems like one of the better options for doing hipfire is to just stick with your preferred attachments on the gun. It was really weird. I did not expect to see that, but I wanted to highlight that because I think maybe if we do a build, like say you're building your attachments to be a hipfire close quarters combat king, you might actually be hurting yourself in the long run because the benefit may not really be that strong. I don't know. It's weird because statistically speaking, it should be 35% better, but yeah, it wasn't. Now again, obviously it's not a huge improvement. 41 to 43% isn't a crazy mind-blowing. It's definitely noteworthy to say the least. I'll show you another example why I think actually might be even more important. Quick recap for the groupings then. So my top 3 attachment combos, so going through these tests, through aiming down sight, was the comp, thumb, and tactical stock. So comp and thumb here, this was my best one, 78% headshot ratio. Second place would have been the comp, half grip, and heavy stock. That's here at 76%. And then also, I guess, kind of tied for second or third place was the angle grip and the heavy stock as well at 76%. The slight edge goes to the half grip simply because I didn't get any bullets into the tier 3 level. And with this one, I got one bullet in tier 3. So it's, I mean, these are pretty negligible in terms of differences. So angle grip and half grip, I would say, are number 2. And for me, the king was the thumb grip and a regular stock on the MP5K. Having said that, I do have my go-to loadouts. So let me go ahead and show you here. So the do-it-all loadout, I think, kind of depends, right? So a lot of people like to go big scopes on their SMGs with canted sight, so they have like long range and close range covered, or they'll grab a 6x and a red dot just to swap between them. So I think a great combination could be 6x, compensator, thumb grip, and heavy stock for the MP5. And that would be like a, you know, you're using this as like your EMT special kit, or you're running solos and you just want to have great combos for close and mid range, and maybe you have your bolt, you know, for very, very far stuff. I think that would be a great do-it-all loadout. And then the other loadout I would say is the close quarters combat loadout. Now this one is kind of tricky because of what I just explained a few minutes ago, that even though technically the suppressor and laser sight are supposed to give you the best recoil control for hip fire, I showed you in that example, it actually isn't always the case. But I did want to point out again that is on a very specific 15-meter away example, and it wasn't that much better. You know, it was a few percentage points better, but it wasn't like it was game breaking. So if you're trying to develop a close quarters combat loadout, I think this would probably be your go-to. Your suppressor, laser sight, and regular tactical stock, because the regular tactical stock is not going to give you that ADS penalty, and you also would still be able to go to hip fire with a suppressor and laser sight and take advantage of those buffs. And I have a holographic sight attached on this example, and I'm curious if any of you guys know, because it's kind of like a not a hidden feature, but it's something that only a few people know unless you've been playing PUBG forever. All right, so we'll take a look at the ADS speed from a holographic compared to a red dot. So again, in order to try to improve this, you get a small buff in ADS speed. It's only 5%. It's very, very, very small. So take a look. Here's regular speed. And I'll go to 10% speed. And so here's 10% speed. And what you'll notice is that there is a specific moment when you can start to see your red dot line up in your sight before you'll see it on the actual red dot scope itself. So go to 10% speed, and right here on the holographic, you can actually start to see the green dot right here, which means you can accurately shoot at a target right here. You could hit this guy knowing this is where I'm aiming, but at that same moment, you don't really know where you're lined up at with the red dot because you can't quite yet see the dot. So there is a little bit of a benefit to using a holographic sight. However, take a look at this example. In this example, you're fully ADS'd. You have your holographic and your red dot. There's 3 enemies in your POV. 1, 2, 3. How many do you see with the holographic? 1, 2. You know where the third one is? If you guessed being hidden behind the holographic scope, you'd be right. So here, your holographic sight, you can see the enemy first. You can start shooting first more accurately. But if there's multiple enemies or you haven't actually found the enemy yet, you could potentially be literally blocking where that enemy is peeking you from. And this can be extremely important when you're in building fight situations and you're peeking out of a door or a window. Maybe you're holding an angle and kind of scanning the area. You could very easily miss a target because of how bulky the holographic sight is. So even though I say if you're building a close quarters combat loadout, the holographic sight technically is going to give you that ADS buff. The thumb grip is also going to give you that ADS buff, you know, so there's some things you can do to really make it snappy aiming down sight. There is a loss that you're going to take with that holographic, and for that reason, I think I typically just recommend red dot. So here's some key takeaways. The red dot versus holo. So you have 5% faster ADS speed, but blocks more POV, right, with the MP5 or the red dot rather. After looking at the firing range stuff, it to me was clear that none of the attachments are necessarily bad for the MP5K, and not that they are really with any guns, but sometimes you can see like where a lightweight grip just doesn't really do what it's supposed to do on the gun, or the thumb grip doesn't control any horizontal controls. The weapon's just really hard to control. I didn't see that with the MP5K. Almost every one of them was very manageable, and I think the MP5K really compensates for it with its high rate of fire. It has a 900 rounds per minute, which is one of the highest in the game. The Vector has like 1,000 rounds per minute. The Uzi has like a 1,200 round per minute. So this is like one of the highest ones up there. So it's very, very strong. You know, I think if you're going to use an MP5K, and really any of the SMGs at this point, that Pubg did recently make a change to them where they have a higher damage drop off. So your damage is going to decrease over distance relatively significantly. And a lot of these SMGs have very slow bullet velocity. So if you're shooting at long range, take a look at this. You have your initial bullet velocity only 380 meters per second. That's slow. That means it's going to be hard to hit a moving target at long distance. It's also going to be very hard to shoot somebody out of a moving vehicle because you're going to have to lead them a lot. And it's going to be hard for people who know that you have an SMG at long distance. They can use that to their advantage by peeking and unpeeking very quickly, basically dodging your bullet before your bullet actually gets there. So I think if you're going to use the SMG, can you get kills at long distance? For sure. Yeah, if you actually compare this weapon, look at MP5K, and compare this thing to the Augie Doggy, and you'll see that it's actually not that far off from what is arguably the best assault rifle in the game. So MP5 on the left, AUG on the right, orange is AUG, blue is MP5K. This website is pubgweapons.com. Shout out by Wacky Jackie. So you'll see the bullet velocity is extremely different, right? 890 meters per second versus 380 meters per second. But look at the damage per second, 510 versus 492. So this thing actually has a higher damage per second than the AUG simply because of its rate of fire, 901 rounds per minute. It's extremely powerful up close, okay? Level 2 helmet, level 2 vest target, close range, so you're 30 meters away. Look at your shots to kill. The AUG takes 2 headshots. MP5 only needs 3 headshots. And guess what? This is going to shoot 3 headshots way faster than the AUG because it has 900 rounds per minute as opposed to 720. Look at chest shots. It's only 1 additional bullet for the MP5K. Look at leg shots. MP5K only needs 6 leg shots compared to what, 5 in the chest for the AUG. That's where you get that limb damage multiplier. So you can see that having this extremely high rate of fire at close range. And remember, I said the MP5K has about 50% less recoil than the AUG. So it literally takes 50% less skill to shoot this weapon accurately, and you can still deal crazy amounts of damage. Crazy amounts of damage. The time to kill is so close on these. You're looking at 0.2 seconds for the MP5K and 0.1 second for the AUG. I mean, in the split second, you're going to be killing each other. Look at the leg, 0.4 seconds for the MP5, 0.36 for the AUG. So very, very close, very, very strong. The problem is, of course, when you start to put some distance on that. So can you put a 6X on the MP5K and do some long distance sprays? Of course, you definitely can, but you're going to really sacrifice that damage over distance because of the initial velocity and the damage drop off that the MP5K just inherently will have compared to assault rifles. So you'll see that damage or time to kill increase significantly, whereas the AUG is pretty low and pretty stable. I would say just remember, if you're going to be using the SMG, remember to have a DMR or a bolt to go with it. At 70, 100 plus meters, usually it's a better idea to swap to your long range weapon. I think the fun stat, MP5K with no attachments is less recoil than a fully kitted AUG. So 0 attachments in MP5K has less recoil than a fully kitted compensator. You know, all the attachments, oh, I thought that was really funny. I went over the top 3 attachment combos that I saw for the MP5K. So maybe one of your preferred loadouts is in that top 3. Again, I would really just stress and recommend the recoil patterns that I did. They are what it is. So they'll be the same for you in the game. But when I showed you guys, you know, my actual recoil control in this test, this is me, my skill level, my sensitivity, all that kind of stuff. You may be better at the game, worse, whatever. So you kind of got to go figure out what's best for you, which is the fun part. You kind of got to figure out what attachments make the most sense for you and your play style. If you're more of a passive compound player, then doing something with more hipfire accuracy maybe makes more sense. More ADS speed maybe makes more sense. If you're going to be long range running, gunning, you know, maybe more vertical and horizontal control with a bigger scope makes more sense. So kind of fine tune that to meet your play style, your needs, you know. There, hope you guys enjoyed it. If you have any comments, leave them down below. I'll get to them, obviously.